Welcome back to Rough Cut Film Review. This is the second part of my review of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. So I've gone into a fair amount of detail about things that don't necessarily work as well as I'd like them to. But I've got to be fair, this is definitely, by a long way, the best use of 3D I've ever seen. I don't know whether this is due to the increased frame rate, because we're up to 48 frames per second, or simply it's because it's very well directed and it intended to be in 3D. You can really see that Jackson intended this from the ground up to be a 3D film. I suspect it looks great because it's a combination of the two things working together. Now, there is an issue with this, and relating to the 42 frames per second. Now, when there is a lot going on, it looks absolutely fantastic. You can't really underestimate just how good it looks when it works. However, when you've got two people just having a bit of dialogue, and a lot of this film is people sitting around having a bit of dialogue, it looks like it's been sped up slightly. So, it reminds me of Mad Max or something, when they have the car chase and they speed everything up. And it looks very unnatural. The lip syncing all fits, but it just looks very odd and it's slightly unsettling and it just doesn't look right. So when there's a massive action scene, it looks incredible, but the little things look wrong. It does look, overall, it does look pretty fantastic. We get I think it's a 20% light loss due to the stupid 3D glasses. And at times it did look like a PlayStation 3 game, but albeit one with very, very good graphics, because there was a lot of CGI stuff in there, and the lighting and the colour of it reminded me of sort of Dragon Age or an RPG or something like this. So we also have the problem that there's too much stuff going on in this film. There's just too much there. Jackson has tried too hard. I think because he split it into three, he's then thought, oh bugger, we need stuff to do. He's trying to jam too much in there, and the film is too long. It's too baggy. I think Jackson is just simply too much in love with the source material, and he isn't objective enough. So he's not worrying about how can I make the best possible film. He's thinking, how can I make the best possible Hobbit film? His attention to detail and his direction are absolutely remarkable, and that's, we've seen that all the way through The Lord of the Rings. He has such a good eye, and a remarkable eye for detail, it has to be said. When it works, this film is astounding. It's really, really good. But there are large parts of this very long film that don't work. I suspect that the real nerdy Lord of the Rings fans, wherever they are, they will really like this, because it is a very true interpretation of Tolkien's work. However, and I don't think people say this enough, Tolkien really wasn't a very good writer. He was a very nerdy, he over-explained everything, that rock there, that's what that rock looked like, It gives Jackson a lot to go on. But, from a dramatic perspective, to me, he just poodles around too much, as does this film. So I think it's, I think it's very tricky. So I think that, Billy and Sally Multiplex and me, Chris Multiplex, will find the film too baggy, and it's too reverential. The film, having said that, the film is likeable. I don't think this is going to be seen as the kind of high esteem that the Lord of the Rings trilogy will. I don't think it'll be seen as a classic. But it's hankered. It's hamstrung by the fact that this is it's a story for children. It's very ambitious. The weight of Jackson's demands on it weighs it down, and it's very heavy with the weight of its own expectation and its demands. I mean, one of the things I always complained about on my Bond special was that when you have all this expectation, it's very difficult to right the ship, to change things, because you can't really change the formula. You'll upset people. So that the limitations of the source material and Jackson's love of it hanker this film. I mean, speaking of limitations, actually, when I started doing Rough Cut Film Review, I was thinking, well, maybe I should have some sort of scoring system. But I thought that was a bit silly. I thought, don't have to be constrained. I mean, what's the difference between a 3-star and a 4-star film? I mean, and then you might have people complaining that one film got 3 stars, one film got 4 stars. Now, if I were to score The Hobbit, say for example, I implemented a 5-star system, this film is not a 1-star film, it's not a 2-star film, it's not a 3-star film, it's not a 4-star film, and it's not a 5-star film. So you'd have to cop out and give it 3 stars and say bits of it are really, really good and bits of it simply don't work. So, you know, thinking about that is going to make my head explode. But, so, by and large, I do like the film. And I think I probably give a sense across that I don't. I do like the film. It is very likeable. It's not as good as the Lord of the Rings, the first part. And it's very similar. It's very, very similar, in fact. But it's just not as dramatic. The film is often thrilling when the 48 frames per second works. It looks incredible, and for a lot of the film it is thrilling, it is exciting, it's well acted, it looks amazing, but for large parts of it, it doesn't work. So it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to judge this one. I think probably overall I'll come down on the side of it's a good film, but I'm constantly reminded, and I constantly keep coming back to the big bits that did not work. So there we go. There's my review of The Hobbit. I do suggest you see it. I think it's sort of a little bit of history in the making. But it is not history in the same way that the Lord of the Rings trilogy is history. That will be remembered as a classic. I don't think this will. But I'm looking forward to the next one. But waiting a year seems a bit rich. Anyway, so there we go. That's Rough Cut Film Review of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Kind regards.